So you may not know this, but Julien is actually a very, very big fan of a show called The Vampire Diaries. And this is something that he used to watch like on loop back in the day because he was a fan of the main character Damon, and he would actually replicate the facial expressions of Damon. And this is sort of
made fan videos of The Vampire Diaries.
Okay, so Julien one day wound up meeting one of the stars from Vampire Diaries, and you were saying how you noticed a difference in your demeanor.
This was out at a hotel in Los Angeles, a very fancy, exclusive hotel, and there was this private party in the lobby, and I was just having a blast, right? I was with a friend of mine, and we were just socializing, and again, no neediness, just in the flow, and no joke, I was joking with him, and we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we met someone like famous here, like super famous? And suddenly I see one of the actresses from the show, The Vampire Diaries, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm in a good mood, let's do this. And I walk up, and immediately that whole dynamic shifts, where instead of me just really feeling at ease, grounded, right, I'm talking to people, I'm just really self-amused. If the interaction ends, the fun continues. There's not that strong attachment to an outcome or a reaction, like, please like me. And as soon as I walk up and say hi, the whole thing shifts. And I remember I'm like, oh, hey. And we shake hands, and suddenly I'm like not letting go of the hand. And it's really just awkward. I'm just like, hey, so, I really need this. And then I let go, and she's like, yeah, so are you a fan of the show or something? And I'm like, maybe, anyway. And then after 30 seconds, it was just so awkward. It's like, well, have a great night. And then we just walked off. And I was like, what happened? And the whole dynamic will shift. The question to ask yourself here is, in an interaction, are you the buyer or are you the seller, right? Say an interaction were to end, would you care more or would the other person care more? Even your intention going into an interaction, are you screening for someone who you might get along with, right? Whether it's in terms of a friendship, romantic relationship, business partner, like whatever. It's like, do we get along, or are you taking the people pleaser route? And that's really when you fall into the seller dynamic. It's like you're this little people pleaser. Please like me, please like me. Even if, say, you go out and socialize, you might be counting your interactions. Like, did that one go well? No, 0 out of 1. Did that one go well? Oh, yes, 1 out of 2. And you're keeping track like this. And the goal is really, everyone, please like me, versus, no. I'm not just going to be selling myself. I'm the buyer. I'm going to go and I'm going to screen, and I'm going to find those people who I'm meant to be with. And if the interaction ends, all is good. There's no longer that neediness underneath it all.
Let's say that there's things that are good about you, and let's say there's things that are, quote, bad about you, or that, people might think are bad. When you are the buyer, people will tend to feel that you don't need anything from them. They can tell that they are being screened. And so what happens is that, rather than them punching, they're counter-punching. Or rather than them, riding the wave the way that you are, they're kind of under the wave, kind of trying to pull themselves back up. And so what winds up happening is it creates something called a halo effect, where let's say, for example, that you're short, funny looking, and you have a twitch, right? Well, they're not going to notice that you're short, funny looking, you're having a twitch. Instead, they might notice how, what great energy you have, or how you're a leader, or how you're funny. It makes your leadership seem more appealing to go along with. It makes your jokes seem funnier. It makes them seem 10 times funnier. It's like, the classic kind of like cheerleader talking to the quarterback, and, the quarterback's like, hey, Jen. And she's like, it's right, because the halo effect is amplified so high that everything just seems amplified. I've had it where there's people who I watch on YouTube and social media, and that's one of the first things that I notice is that I'll tend to almost over-exaggerate in my mind their positive qualities, and I have to remind myself that it's just another human being. I've also had it to where people would see me out, and, I'm ordering a hamburger, and then, with, say, like a waiter, and then they come up to me, and they're like, the way you ordered that hamburger was just unbelievable, and I'm like, it's completely the halo effect. Like, what you're seeing is, like, it's literally just a halo effect. We teach a lot about, for example, how to be present to the moment, and I think both of us are sometimes very, very deeply present. I think sometimes we could be in our heads and not that present. And I've had it where, like, we could be hanging out and I'm not that present at all. Like, I'm in my head, like, being annoyed about something, and then someone comes up, who saw me out, and they're like, oh, I've never seen someone as present as you. I can see it right in your eye how present you are. And I'm thinking, like, that's kind of the result of me, like, making a lot of videos about meditation and presence, and, like, I'm super not present right now. And people will just kind of have a halo effect on whatever it is that you do. Funny enough, and this is also important, even our roles as teachers, and this is a subtle point, but it's valuable. Even our roles as teachers part of what we do is generating a halo effect. See, you might have had it where you had a teacher and you couldn't pay any attention. Like you're sitting there in class and you're like, wow, I really want to learn, science or math or English or history or whatever it is. And you're like, I really, really wish I could focus, but this teacher's so boring. I can't pay attention. So that's typically common in like public school system, and there's not like a high incentive system, but in like really, really skilled private educators can actually be very skilled at generating a halo effect. And now what you can wind up doing is like a 15-hour seminar for 4 or 5 days straight, and you've got hundreds of people at the edge of their seat just going crazy, writing down everything, trying everything that you're doing, and they're like, wow, I've never met a teacher like this. This is amazing. And that's where like a guru or teacher gets this kind of rock star vibe, and part of that is amplified by a halo effect that you can actually generate. And what winds up happening is, for example, if you do sales from the stage, you wind up doing hundreds of thousands or millions in sales. If you wind up teaching a concept, people will, they'll write it down, they'll internalize it, they'll take it seriously. They'll sit in a room for 50, most people couldn't sit in a room for an hour and a half. Most people could barely handle 15 minutes without, changing the little stimulus in the internet browser. And you've got people in a room completely locked in for 15 hours a day. People are going crazy, they're in tears, they're changing their lives, they're having follow-up after the program, all because you've walked in there and you have that vibe of, look, I'm here to help you, but really, there's a lot of other things I could be doing. You're not saying that or being rude, but they can feel that. They feel lucky to be there. And so their RAS will hyper-focus on what you're saying and put a halo effect around it, and then they'll go implement it. And that's actually part of being a great teacher. Continuing down this path, I was even saying to you today, like we're both fathers. Funny to say that, but anyway, but yeah, we're both. How did that happen? Yeah, so we're both fathers, and I was saying to Julien, I was like, I want my children to see me as a superhero. I don't need my children looking up to me, Spider-Man, Superman, whatever. Like, that's all good too. It's fun, but I want them to see, me as a father, as a superhero. Because we were talking about this, because we were saying what we were having a discussion about what motivates us, and I was saying, and we were talking about how much we're both motivated by being good fathers and being there for our children, and then we were chatting about how yes, live for your children, but at the same time, don't live so much for your children that they don't have a halo effect for you, because what winds up happening is now you can't teach them anymore. So now you're sitting there working for them all the time and all resentful, because I gave you everything, and now you're like smoking weed, right? Like, I say that either way. But the point is like, you know what I mean, right? And you've spent your whole life to give them, to make them have a good life. But look at all the kids who hate their parents because the parents have given them everything. Rather, the way that I try to do it with my kids is I bring my kids to parties, I bring my kids to seminars, we go skiing together, and I'm with a lot of really cool people. And so my kids are like, wow, I want to be like my dad someday. I want to hang out with cool people. I want to date cool people. I want to do cool things. I want to travel. I want to have a business. I want to do all that cool stuff. So now if when I look at my sons, literally all I have to do, I'll let my kids pretty much do what they want to have fun. But if I look at my kids, I just go, hey, like that. I'm just, literally that's. I'm just like that. Instantly, they stop what they're doing. Because I haven't burnt my kind of parent capital with them. I haven't. I'm not crying wolf at every little thing and try to control them. But also because they admire me, at least now. For now, right? We'll see in 10 years. We'll see how well this video ages. Right? Kids all cracked out. I hate you, Dad. Look on YouTube. But anyway, okay. Dylan, Vincent, no. No. Okay, so, but what I'm aiming for anyway, what I'm trying for is, again, when you are that superhero for your kids, well then, and you're not like, oh, I'll just give you everything. I'm just here for you, even though you are, but at the same time, you want to still be doing your thing and having your swag so they admire you, so they'll listen to you, right? Now, it's a challenge I even had a bit with my parents where I kind of look at the life that they had, and I kind of didn't really care that much to replicate that. So they give me advice. I didn't take it as seriously, and I'm so super appreciate my parents, but it was a bit harder. So that's something that I've kind of tweaked. Point being is this. There's what's good about you and what's so-called bad about you, even though really nothing's bad about you. But you know my point. When you have the buyer-seller dynamic down, people will overly emphasize what's good and ignore what's bad.
This is something, again, that can happen as you move up, say, in the world, right? You increase your status. You might be thinking, well, I just got to be a celebrity then, right? Yes, they will have the halo effect due to that status.
You get on Vampire Diaries.
It's like the gold. It must be on Vampire Diaries. But you don't need to rely on that. This is something that you can just generate in the moment, no matter who you are, right? In real life, you could say by societal standards, really low status, right? Low paying minimum wage job, nothing going for you. You're in, again, your mom's basement, and you come out and you can just generate that on the fly, okay? And when you do, once more, halo effect. And you should be able to summon that at will, especially in interactions where it really matters. Like, whoa, if I start connecting with this person, that opportunity, you better generate that halo effect. Because otherwise, the opposite will happen. Okay, now in order to do so, number one, it really comes down to you, cheesy as it sounds, filling your own cup, right? There's that classic saying, right, especially say romantically when it comes to soulmates, it's like you're a half, that other person's a half, and you're looking for your other half. The more you feel not whole within, the more you're going to start chasing, and that's the dynamic you're going to be setting. I'm the seller. Oh, please, will you buy me? Buy my half, right? Just constantly selling. So filling your own cup, that comes down to deep inner work and self-amusement. Okay, deep inner work is the at-home part of it, right? Really learning how to own, okay, why don't I feel complete within? Why don't I feel whole? And then in the moment, saying things for you, right? Whatever outcome you think a person may give you, right? For example, right, back to the Vampire Diaries. If this person just smiles and gives me some approval, I will finally feel great and whole and fulfilled. And the approach is, I want to say something, give me the pebble of approval, and if I get it, I feel great. Instead, let's give myself the pebble. Oh, the pebble's actually in my hands. Give yourself the pebble of approval. You feel great. And guess what? By automatically giving yourself the outcome you hope another person may give you, suddenly there's no longer that neediness. Suddenly you're like, wow, I actually feel great. I gave myself what I thought this person would, give me. And just by that, because you automatically now need less from the other person than that person needs from you, they'll automatically need more from you, and the dynamic will shift and the halo effect will activate. Okay, so learning how to self-amuse, deep inner work, and then a third thing, if you want to sprinkle it on top, and this is one where sadly if you confuse it with the foundation of it all and you try to overly do it, it can make things worse. You can, there's a little sprinkle, there's a steak, there's the spice, you can sprinkle in disqualifications, right? You can disqualify yourself. For example, if you want to be friends with someone, you can say, you know what, we'd never be friends. Just something like that can sometimes trigger the dynamic and flip the script. But if it's not done on that healthy foundation of you actually meaning it and people sense like it's not very congruent, it'll actually make things worse and draw attention to that.
And you can joke and say we both have too strong a personality. So you're kind of giving them props for the strong personality, but then using it as a disqualifier.
Yeah, we'd never be friends, too strong personality. Something like that. Like, oh, the opposite of someone who would like really need their approval, right? Someone who needs their approval is like, please be my friend. I don't think we'd make good friends. What? Right? So little things like that sprinkled on, self-amusement, deep inner work.
Yeah, you'll see it to where even, but it's funny, you've got to keep in context that foundation of deep inner work because when you are doing so from a centered place, sometimes you can even drive interactions by using a lot of different things that just show that you don't need it. So it could be everything from being in a conversation and right on a high point, just saying, and then turning around talking to somebody else. And then if they really feel like they were enjoying it that much, it's like, ooh, and it really, really can pull people in.
Just one other subtlety here, just so you don't get too hooked on like, oh, I better start saying disqualifiers, right? You can do the same thing by actually saying something of you qualifying as long as the foundation is good. So as long as you're actually in that frame of like, I'm self-amusing, you can tell the person, hey, will you please be my friend? Please like me, please, I'm the seller. And if you're saying it as a joke, it actually comes off as the buyer. So don't get too hooked on the words either.
Yeah, that's where the authenticity comes in. And that's why Julien said the deep inner work, right? And what's funny, and this is what is kind of funny, is that when you've done the deep inner work, it's like almost like everything works. You can break every rule and they all work, at least most of the time. And then, when you're not coming from a good place, a lot of time, you do everything by the textbook and it's like none of it works, right? And that's where, Julien and I will even have people come meet us on the street and because they've kind of read that sort of content, you'll see them actually start to do it. And it can be sort of a cringe fest because what happens, like, somebody comes up and like, hey, I've seen your stuff. It's okay. You're like, cool, man. I'm really sure you think it's okay. Right? And they're like, yeah, I mean, helps other people. Like, whatever, right? And you're like, cool. And it's one of those things where you can tangibly feel that there's a need there and they're poking at a button to try to generate something. So what's funny is that something like say a disqualifier, just anything that shows that you don't need something, is what I've noticed that it does, that it draws attention to wherever you're at. So if you're really, really centered and you're like, and you start talking to somebody else, that draws attention to how great the interaction is and to how much they'd like to reinitiate that interaction. But if you're like, right, and like you're totally obviously doing it to try to spark a reaction, it actually reminds them how they'd probably rather not even be in the conversation with you. And so the conversation is sort of, and the energy in it is sort of in this death spiral. Yeah. And then you kind of like, it's like if you're in a relationship with somebody who's like you're really, really thinking of breaking up with, and they're like, we need to talk. You need to be home at 7 p.m. You need to do this. You need to do that. And you're kind of like, maybe I'm kind of done, right? But like if they hadn't done that, you might have like kept kicking the can down the road and it could have improved. But because of the fact that they did that, it just drew attention. It ended it. So things like that are really, really good in situations where you are centered. And really that's what Julien is getting at here, is that the ultimate disqualification is that when you are so rooted and grounded in yourself, so embodied within your own positive energy, and people can feel that, and it comes through in the pupil and in little micro dilations in the pupil, in vocal tonality, in range of expression, because you're so indifferent that you have more mental bandwidth to be expressive, with a whole other topic, but I'll take that as like a quick one. Basically, when you feel good about yourself, you'll have more range of expression. You'll have better cadence in your voice. You'll have better projection. You'll be able to talk about things more easily. You'll be able to free associate. You'll have less ums and ahs, although I don't think those are that bad, so don't try to like remove them mechanically or anything. I do this sometimes too, you know what I mean, right? So, but you'll be more fluid, and that's frankly a little bit why when we do public speaking, we do free associative public speaking. We get in front of a big crowd, and a lot of time we don't even have a microphone, and the voice is booming over 100 people or a couple hundred people, and we're free associating, all that kind of stuff. That happens not by learning the secret trick of free association, although there's some that can help, actually. We will get into them. But I think 80% of it is just cleaning out what's in here and reclaiming all that mental bandwidth and mental, that kind of intuition and intelligence and whatnot. When you reclaim that, and then suddenly you've got all these superpowers that you don't normally have. So basically the ultimate version of, being centered or being the buyer, or even things like disqualification, really is that vibe. And that, in our experience, is going to supersede anything that you can do to deliberately try to tilt the buyer-seller dynamic. But if you do something, such as maybe like, move to talk to somebody else, or tease about not getting along, or things like that, well, or having a lot of people around you in social proof, well, then that's going to further highlight it. So it in effect is not... It's not necessarily going to drive an interaction to show or to state overtly that you are the buyer, but what it can do is that it can highlight that you are when you make a joke about it. If you say, hey, are you adventurous? If you're not adventurous, I don't know if I can hang out with you, right? Well, if you say that from a centered place, that it's just kind of like, right? Like it's really going to hit. But if you say that when you're adventurous, because you're not adventurous, I'm not going to hang out with you. And they're like, it's okay. Like, it's okay if we don't hang out. And so you'll see it draws attention to where you're at.
The last thing I'd say here too is that this does also require you asking yourself, who do I want to connect with, right? It's shifting out of the people pleaser. It's like, say you are the buyer, then what are you looking for? Right? What type of person you want to connect with when it comes to your friends, right? What kind of friends do I want? What kind of relationship do I want? What kind of business associations do I want? And actually making that list, because that is also what puts you in that buyer frame versus anyone just please like me. It's, hey, I'm going to say hi to this person and let's see if it makes sense, if we connect, if we have the same, say, shared values, so on and so forth. So also sitting down and asking yourself, what do I want? What do I value, right? What makes sense for me to associate with? Getting really clear on that and reminding yourself of all that while you socialize as well, okay? No more people pleaser socializing. It's, hey, I'm going to talk to a lot of people and I'm going to screen through it. I'm going to sort through it to find the people I'm meant to be with, to find my tribe, okay? So never forget this. Buyer-seller dynamic activates the halo effect, deep inner work, self-amusement, and then getting clear on what you want.